So next up, we have a team that is so good that other teams try to steal information from them. And that is none other. Teams really want their entire structure. They just want to establish the bedrock that will allow the success that this team is having. That is, of course, the New York Knickerbockers.
Yep. Yeah, we
Live
had
from
a
Manhattan.
regular Watergate security camera footage. Saw Masai Ujiri in the Knicks headquarters in the middle of the night with his flashlight leafing through booklets, trying to find draft information. But
But it's also funny because it's not really like Masai's not being blamed for it, even though there is that history
right,
between Masai and New York. But like it's like the coach or the coaching staff that has been blamed, like this the newly hired coach Darko is being blamed for potentially. So it's kind of like an embarrassing look for him. But again, we don't actually know anything. Like we're joking
yeah,
right now. There's been some accusations made. There's been a lawsuit. Like the Knicks are suing a former employee for stealing proprietary information, and what people have said about it is that's trickled up to like the coach trying to like establish some the game planning systems and stuff like that, which just sounds too silly. So I don't like. I'm waiting to see what information, but the lawsuit is legit. It's happening. It's been reported on by Baxter Holmes, so it's a thing. We just don't really know any more than that right now. So for now, it's all fun and games. We'll see if we have a Spygate here or if this is just sort of like one of those things where companies make all their employees sign NDAs for everything, and they're not very enforceable. But if information does get sort of like taken or used, they try to enforce it, and then we'll see what happens. So, not a whole lot to report on the New York Knicks off season
no,
besides, some extensions, and they've signed 1 trillion players to, Exhibit 10 and two-way contracts. Josh Hart signed a 4-year, $81 million contract extension,
yep.
including a team option in 2028. But yeah,
And Dante DiVincenzo is like their main addition from last year.
yeah. Dante
Stole him away from
DiVincenzo
the
is
Warriors.
in, and Obi Toppin is out. They sent him off to the Pacers, so and that's a bit of a
Yep.
fan favorite in New York.
But they
So
signed his brother,
yeah,
so
yeah.
they
I
have
was
the new
noticing
Toppin.
like yeah, and they also signed Obadiah Noel, so they're just really shoring up on players with the same last names of players who are recently in the New York Knicks front court. I have no idea whether Obadiah Noel has any relation to Nerlens Noel, but I'm going to pretend right now for fun that that they're brothers.
I mean, the Knicks have a long history of this. I remember when they signed J.R. Smith's brother once a few years
Oh
ago, and
yeah, yep,
it was like
yep.
a minor outrage because J.R. Smith's brother was taking the roster spot of a more deserving player, but he wasn't with the team very long anyway.
You got to keep J.R. Smith happy.
Yeah.
So yeah, without this team, it was huge. This team won a playoff series last year.
Mm.
Beat a team that we expected to have a matchup advantage against them. It just kind
Yeah.
of legitimizes their current roster and their coach. Um, we can debate over how surprisingly easy it was to beat Cleveland because of roster flaws, but I'd rather just kind of give the credit to New York right now and just say like they played a great series. They
Yeah.
gutted it out against Miami too. That was not like an easy series for Miami. It went 6 games, and there was lots of good moments for New York. So I mean, we really are living in the most golden era of New York basketball since the '90s. Um, it's a really good, solid team. It's so weird for the Knicks to just have a good, solid, normal team. Um, I guess my only question though is like, what's the next step, and where is the growth going to come from for them?
Yeah. I mean, they do have some young players. This isn't a team that's completely absent of young talent. I think just seeing RJ Barrett make an improvement in some aspect of his game would be so huge. Like whether that's improving the at rim finishing or improving the shooting. Like we talked about this last year, but either one would be massive for his game. I mean, he has looked pretty good attacking the basket in World Cup, although this is a very different basketball format. So I don't know how much we can really draw away from that. Emmanuel quickly also really fell off. late in the season. I'm
There's
not really
there was some injuries things. There were injury things
okay.
happening there.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what was going on because he went from like, you know, being six man of the year runner up to like barely playing in the playoffs and looking really rough when he was out there. So
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully he can bounce back from that because I look more at Emmanuel Quickly and Quentin Grimes as the best source of their youth growth. Like it's hard to picture RJ Barrett improving only because we've never seen it.
yeah,
We've never seen RJ Barrett was like the best 16-year-old in the world. And if you could say if someone could give me one thing that has improved in his game since then, that would be news to me. Um, I
I think
don't love.
his fashion game has probably improved.
He's not a bad player. There's lots of like he's got
Yeah,
interesting
he's
tools.
fine.
He's so strong. He's he's a big, strong, versatile guard who just doesn't quite do anything well enough from a playmaking or a scoring perspective.
Yeah.
Um,
And in the
like
in the in the fourth quarters again, especially in the Heat series, you started to see RJ Barrett was on the bench, and Quentin Grimes and Josh Hart were out there.
I mean, just like, what are you going to do? Get back to your left hand? What are you going to do when we like? It is amazing how well he gets back to his left hand. Like the entire
Yeah,
defense is ready for him to go left,
and he does it.
and he goes left, and then he counters back right, and they don't buy it.
Yeah,
They keep guarding his left, and then he still finds a way to get to his left and gets off some kind of shot. So there's a stubborn heroicness to that, but like yeah, it's just sort of like it still hasn't popped. It is starting to get concerning that just like RJ Barrett's going into his fifth year, and we just don't see any kind of upticks in anything. And I don't like it's. I thought he was going to be as a Canadian. I thought he was going to be the antidote to the Wiggins experience, and instead it's just been like Wiggins 2.0
it
in
just
terms of just
well,
like
it turns out Wiggins was the antidote to the Wiggins
yeah,
experience. Warriors
yeah,
Wiggins, yeah.
yeah. But yeah, the Canadian basketball royalty is disappointing. But I still like RJ Barrett. I still actually like watching him play. It's like he's tough, he's strong, he's wing sized. I don't want to hate too far on that. I do think that like I don't know they've got Josh Hart and Quentin Grimes, and I sort of wonder like is RJ Barrett the third best kind of like wing out of those three, but he's gonna still be treated like
I
the
think so in
kind of
terms of
third
just like
star.
in terms of fit, in terms of
Yeah.
offensive cohesion. Yeah.
Yeah, much more concerning is that RJ Barrett, is that Julius Randle turned into a pumpkin once again when the playoffs came around. There was some injury concerns there as
That's what
well.
happens.
So
It's the
yeah,
playoffs. It's Julius Randle. These things
um,
occur.
yeah. I mean, there's another guy that's allowed to. It's just weird that they got two guys soaking up so many possessions for less than ideal offense, and they're still able to win a round of playoff basketball sort of thing. And
Well, their defense
um,
is really good. If we're going the route where we're heaping praise on the Knicks for how bad Cleveland looked, their defense was very solid. They
yep,
killed Cleveland on the offensive glass, which is crazy against a team that plays two 7-footers. Um, but they did.
yep, yeah. Shout
So
out Mitchell Robinson. And then Mitchell Robinson, like he like struggles in the next series, and Knicks fans were just immediately turned right around and were complaining about Mitchell Robinson. I was like, he won you the first series,
yeah,
like give Mitchell Robinson a break. He just absolutely demolished two, other 7-footers like defensive player of the year candidates, and
Miami was a bad matchup for him.
yeah. But we are, I do think that it is time to acknowledge Mitchell Robinson is if Steven Adams didn't exist, I would comfortably say Mitchell Robinson is the best offensive rebounder in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
He's a total problem on the offensive glass, and if Steven Adams declines or is injured for another season, I'm willing to give him the crown for that. So
Yeah, and
I like Mitchell Robinson.
I think that contract is totally reasonable. Yeah, it's a declining contract. He's only
Yeah,
making 12 million a couple of years from now. Some people were, kind of retching in their mouths when he initially signed that deal, but I think
I never got that.
it's totally fine.
And yeah, I mean the only thing I felt bad about that contract is that Mitchell Robinson had to say stuck in the Tom Thibodeau offense, which means that he is not allowed to shoot or touch the ball in anything except for offensive putbacks. The guy averages like 4 field goal attempts per game.
Yeah.
Like that's just like that's a very very low number for a starter. And I know that there's like some obvious like limitations there, and his free throw shooting last year was
Well, how
super
much of that?
abysmal.
Let me ask you this: how much of that is Tom Thibodeau, and how much of that is Jalen Brunson? I mean, like I know everyone wants to get on the Jalen Brunson Express because he, overperformed his contract last year. But like at the same time, like when Jalen Brunson, I mean, he can drive into the paint and collapse the defense a little bit, but like he's looking for his own shot when he does that.
Yeah,
Like
he's a pure
he's
scorer, but
he
there's
never even glances towards Mitchell Robinson.
but I'm not going to put the blame on Jalen Brunson for that, just because Robinson has been playing for Thibodeau for a few years now, and that has remained. Where there's only been 1 year of Brunson, there's been 3 years of Tibbs, or
Yeah.
2 years of Tibbs, and that is like he was getting up to almost 6 field goal attempts, and then Tibbs came and it went back down, and it went down again a little bit. So I don't think it mattered, but yeah, it's a scoring point guard, and I think like that's kind of one of the reasons I think like where's the next step and where's the growth going to come from is like it's cool that Jalen Brunson is a resilient playoff scorer. That's one of the
Mhm.
hardest things to be in the NBA is like be able to get buckets against NBA playoff defenses. So it's amazing that he can do that. But to me, that's still the kind of offense that bails you out of tough situations, not the offense that
Not your
like
bread and butter.
kills the other opponent. And he was still up and down in the playoffs. He was like they did manage to turn Jalen Brunson off a couple times. There are limitations, and he doesn't have the counters he needs to just be like unstoppable all the time. But yeah, averaging like 28 points per game in the playoffs on solid efficiency and being able to get to the free throw line a little bit at his size and relative lack of athleticism. It was just like
Mhm.
a very heroic showing from Jalen Brunson. He deserves all the credit in the world, but if that's your best offense and Julius Randle is not going to be contributing, you're not going to beat really good opponents like that. So it's like, and when I look at Quentin Grimes and Emmanuel Quickly, I can see here's how the Knicks improve on the margins. Like Quickly becomes a defensive monster that's sniping threes, and Quentin Grimes is this do-it-all guy. But then we're still kind of that still doesn't give them like the point of attack that they need to take another leap on offense. And this offense was like was really really good in the regular season, but Tibbs is one of those coaches that knows how to game the little things and get that offensive efficiency up really high. So I don't know. I just don't know how. I also think that New York, they were in this bracket last year with like Toronto, Miami, Atlanta, and Chicago, and I just feel like they had the best health and best shooting luck, and so they kind of emerged from the pack.
Yeah.
But if you played out the season simulation 100 times, like New York could have been Toronto or Atlanta or Chicago.
I still believe in
Um,
the Knicks this season more than I do. I mean, more than all three of those teams that you
yeah,
mentioned for sure.
and they're the most because they're just so solid. Like
Yeah.
there's like all their lineups, like you got the right mix of ingredients to play really good basketball, and just not have these massive holes where those other teams all kind of have massive holes in places, which is why I also trust the Knicks more. But I'm just like, how do you go from that when your best players are Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson, and like take another step or try to make an Eastern Conference Finals? Like, I just think that's like I don't see they have any chance of beating a team like
Yeah.
Boston
I mean,
or
they're other
Milwaukee at full health.
they're a third big money guy, after Brunson and well, after Brunson and Barrett, it just needs to be improvement over Julius Randle. I think, like Julius Randle just isn't a consistent fourth quarter offensive option slash playoff offensive option.
Yeah,
He doesn't really space the floor that consistently. He kind of drives into the paint and gets himself into trouble and forces up bad shots a lot. He's often reluctant to move the ball, and he's not much of a defensive presence. Like, he's okay. Like he puts up like numbers in the regular season. He's like a minutes eater, but he's
yeah.
not a guy that you can really rely on to be a secondary option.
He's really strong and he's really versatile, but he doesn't do. There's nothing that he does at a crazy high enough level that is pushing you over the top. And New York went from having like R.J. Barrett and Julius Randle being these two guys that could like really fight and scrape to get you 20 plus points
Mhm.
on sub 45% shooting, and they've upgraded that to Jalen Brunson, who can fight and scrap his way to doing that at 47% shooting. That's still just not like an offense that is going to do damage against really good playoff defense. So that's like, I really respect what New York has done. I just wonder if the progress is going to come in the form of a trade. And when it comes to Knicks and making trades and trying to upgrade their
Yeah.
talent, it's a little bit
Well, I mean,
nerve
they
wracking.
have they have the contracts to make pretty much any deal happen, and they have, there's entire draft pick stash still
Yeah,
available. So
they're in a great position just in
yeah,
general. But just
it's
not,
just
they're just not
it's just
currently in a
gonna
position
take
to take an
yeah,
obvious next step.
it's just gonna take the right trade to really push them up over the top, and whether that
I
will happen
agree.
this year or next year or never, I don't
Yeah.
know. Don't want to be overly negative, but like, yeah, we just don't know what that is yet.
Yeah, love the backcourt and wing depth on this team, especially, and I love that they've got like two really good, basically starter level NBA centers, and there's so much to like about this team, and they're also really fun to watch last year in the regular season and the playoffs. So
Mhm.
hopefully they continue with that stability and do it again and make some improvements on the margins. So
Okay,
any
enough
other
Knicks
Knicks
love.
love?
We can't have this much Lakers hate and Knicks love in one podcast. We're gonna get docked for that or something.
I could say, I mean, like a lot of those things I could say about the Lakers in terms of like, in past episodes, I've talked about how much I like the construction of the Lakers, but I feel like these teams are actually really similar. They're really like deep, well built teams that probably don't have the high end talent actually to like, obviously LeBron and Anthony Davis are more exciting than Jalen Brunson and
Julius Randle.
Julius Randle. But just when
Yeah,
the injuries kind of kick in and LeBron's age kicks in, it's just like it's really got to hit for them to have that high level talent. So they kind of melt into being more
yeah,
of a sub Knicks level, even with a higher ceiling.
yeah.
Any other Knicks thoughts? Are we gonna get the
Well,
last
it's
team?
it's time to talk about another really exciting team. Arguably
No.
even more so than the Knicks. I know. Even Elon just loves it when we talk about the Clippers on this
You
podcast.
just called me Elon. You just called
Yeah,
me. Yeah,
sorry about
I'm
that.
Ian Musk.
I'm having one of
I
those
give those
days where I'm just
vibes.
not pronouncing words correctly.
Or maybe you called me Elam, like the Elam ending in basketball. I think I'd rather
Yeah,
be compared to the Elam ending in basketball than the owner of X.
yeah.